Hi there, and welcome to How to Be a Faith-Inspired Fiction Author. I'm your host, Dominic, founder of LegendFiction, pretty much a dork, a reader just like you, and a writer probably like most of the people watching this. If you're like me, you're deeply in love with your faith, you are passionate about your faith, and you love the craft of telling stories. We love understanding how stories work, and we love to create them and to tell them for others or for ourselves. What I want to go over really briefly in the 15 minutes that we have here is the key ideas that are part of a course that I wrote maybe about 7 years ago when I was trying to figure it out for myself. You see, maybe like you, as a teen, I got into writing early and I absolutely loved it. I went through the Writers Institute for Children's Literature, which was like this relatively intense 2-year course getting you to really think hard about the craft of writing. And that's where I discovered, I knew I loved writing and world building and brainstorming. Now they really got me to focus on how does characterization work? How does dialogue work? How does story structure work? And I just loved it. It was fantastic. I wrote a bunch of terrible stuff, of silly stories, and by the end started getting a sense of, I have improved my craft, the craft of writing. Since then, I've not written that much, a few short stories, but I focused a lot on my faith because I've begun to realize there are 3 different kinds of authors out there, and I was trying to decide which one am I. There's the kind of author who only cares about writing just creative writing, just fiction. All you want to do is just have fun. I don't want to think about anything. These are the kinds of people, perhaps, who write for the market. All they care about is making the income, making the paycheck. And so they will write whatever the market asks, whatever the fans want, and so on. In that sense, it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog, right? Instead of an author having a valuable creative contribution to make to other people's lives, even if it's fun and it's lighthearted and it's simple. But this is what authors do, like a potter or a painter. Somebody who has creativity is somebody who is in contact with divine creativity, and it's emerging through you in some way. And maybe you need to spend a while improving your craft. But if all you're doing is just being moved by the craft, or you're being moved by whatever anybody else wants, there's a chance you may not put out something good. You might put out something harmful, or it might just be blah, might not be anything. And after 10 years, 20 years, you might look back and wonder, what did I do with all of my time? Was that even a good idea? But there's some people who are in that space. I won't say it's a bad thing. I think it's a space a lot of us might be in. Some of us might need to be in. If you're a ghostwriter, if it's your job. But that's not who legend fiction is for. There's another kind of author, especially of a faith-inspired fiction author. And this is the kind that's more like, it's more evangelistic, right? This is the kind of author that is more they are like a catechumen, somebody who is recently converted, for example, to either being Orthodox or Christian or Catholic. You're absolutely in love and aware of sacramentals, lives of the saints, sharing the truths. It's like when you're dating someone for the first time, all you can see is them. Or when you're starting a new book or a new adventure or a new game, for a period, all that's on your mind is that. And you haven't yet learned to get past that initial honeymoon period and maybe integrate that so that it becomes a part of who you are. Like somebody learning a new training program. For a while, everybody in any college 101 class, everybody all of a sudden feels like we're so wise. It's totally me in college 101. We're using all of these quotes and we're using all of these ideas that our teachers are giving us because we all of a sudden have been exposed to a whole bunch of new things that we think are wonderful. And so we're using them and talking about them all the time. By the time you're like 2 years in, 3 years in, that's kind of calmed down. You have integrated it. It's now a part of who you are, and it's a part of how you are looking at the world, interacting with things and ideas from a deeper, maybe a more articulated, a more real standpoint. You're less skimming about on the surface of things, and you've gone deep to understand how and why and who and so on. So there's the kind of author that doesn't even like you said, the first author doesn't even care about that stuff. It just isn't that where they are in their life. They're just not interested. It's not exactly who's going to benefit from our community or this talk. There's the second kind, who is like the new convert. They're the kind of people who will probably enjoy this more because I'm going to invite you. We need to go deeper. And then there's the third kind. These might be people who are cradle Catholics. There might be people who have worked through a conversion experience, or they converted, or they feel like they more fully awoke to the deep genius and the wisdom of the faith tradition that they're in. These kinds of people, when they go and do something, they're not as interested in, like the College 101 kids, in seeing everything that, in like being a torchlight and shining that torchlight on everything. Instead, they're just as interested in, well, what does the darkness around us teach us? What does the shadows also teach us? Because everything is gradations of light. Everything is gradations of God. Everything is an expression of God. This is a thing we'll come back to over and over again. God is not in competition with his creation. And you'll find people like the mystics and like the saints, they are less concerned with all of the rules and all of the details, and they're more concerned with what is the big picture, because that God is concerned with the big picture of your life. Yes, you might be going through this thing in your life right now. This might be your stage. What is the point of your life? What is the point of everything? How do we see God at work? What is the big idea at work happening inside your life, inside my culture, inside my life, and so on? I posit that is the kind of author that our culture needs. That is the kind of author that we're trying to bring together, that we're trying to inspire here with legend fiction. So these second two authors are the ones who are really going to, I believe, thrive and benefit, because here is the key thing. Stories are about connecting us with a universal human experience. Now, there are maybe 12 different kinds of people out there. If you're into, if you understand the archetypes, if you're in like, what is the MBTI system? There's like maybe 16. If you follow whatever, there's 9 faces of God. There's all kinds of different kinds of people. Different kinds of people want different kinds of stories, and different kinds of stories emphasize different kinds of success. But at its core, there is a universal human experience, because we are all human before we are all individuals. We're all part of this thing that is humanity. And because of that, we all share in the divinity of Christ. When he became man, he elevated our humanity and did something. This is why I believe the Orthodox have this tradition of theosis, which is God became man so that man could become God. Now, we're not God, obviously. We don't claim to it. It is something that we ask for, which is why we go to communion. We receive communion, because you become what you eat. This is a tradition. It's called divinization in the Western tradition, which is part of my Catholic background. We don't talk about that as much, but it is true. It's back there. It's in there. Christ became human. Now there's an opportunity for all of us to become little Christs, which means we're connected to the same divine imagination of God, the same divine creativity of God, the same humanity of Christ. So in every age, every human, therefore, is hungry for the same sorts of things. No matter where you are in the world, most of us identify with our cultures. We identify with the identity that we build up for ourselves in the first half of our lives. We are nurtured by and formed by the stories that we read. But somebody tells you a good story, no matter what the culture is, and we stop and we listen. There's just something about the magic of telling a story and the magic of capturing somebody's imagination with an experience that they could never have maybe experienced in their lives. But now you're inviting them to join you in something that you think is just deeply beautiful and important, maybe exciting and adventurous. Maybe it's a look below the surface of a normal human life, to love something 1 degree more deeply and see what that does to your character, to your life. So what I see is the job of every generation is a job of translation, especially if you're Christian. We have the you can call it the yeast fermentation, the germ, the seed of the gospel in every generation. And we can go back and we can read the sacred scriptures, But every generation, how do I say this? We're not driving, in the sense that the Christian sense of the world is not driving the culture. We're perhaps trying to build some of our own. We're engaging with others. The rest of the world just kind of is doing the best that it can, offering the widest possible generosity to everybody. The culture all around the world are also grappling with the fact that they have hungers and needs that truly can only be met by authentic experience and encounter with God, a relationship with Christ, experience of Christ, the sacraments, and so on. But not all of them have any idea what's going on. So there is a lot of sadness, madness, badness mixed in with this struggle for coming to understand truth, beauty, and goodness. But if you want to go and meet somebody, you do have to understand where they are. And that's where we are with modern cultures. We can look around for the first time in human history, and all of a sudden we can be connected over the internet to almost anybody, anywhere. But more importantly, there is a series and themes of great stories that have connected all of us. And we can only just look at what is super popular in modern media. Now, whether that's good or not is another discussion. The point is that when something becomes super popular, it becomes culturally relevant. It becomes something that we can all share in and talk to. And whether you know who that person is, if you like the same story as somebody else, you instantly feel a sense of kinship. That's the power of story, something we both enter into this third thing, and we both understand each other from the inside out in that way because of what a story can give us. So it's our job. If we love our faith, our job is to then translate that into the kinds of stories that every generation wants to read. Now, I guess there are some authors that say, oh no, we need to be building enduring pieces of fiction, classics, and so on. I'm not so sure that when the classics were written, they were trying to create the classics. They were trying to communicate something they felt was incredibly important to their time. And then time sifted the wheat and the chaff and found that the stories that did the best job of articulating something true and timeless, beautiful, compelling, challenging, something that is perhaps uniquely true across all human experience, those are the ones that became the classics. So I would recommend, don't try to write a classic. Try to write something that you feel is meaningful and powerful and beautiful to you. Now, maybe you're at a point in your life where you're not exactly sure what that is. And this is the important thing, is don't try and shoehorn your faith into it. If you're somebody who's made a potter, you need to make 1,000 pots before you can make the one beautiful, perfect pot or cup that fulfills its function properly, that you are finally satisfied with. If you're a painter, you're going to paint or sketch or do 1,000 doodles to prepare yourself to do something that might be wonderful at another time. So have fun and enjoy the craft of writing, because that is our job. That's our mission as fiction writers, is to enjoy the process of creating and writing fiction, having fun telling stories. Learn the process of beginning a story, captivating somebody's attention, creating compelling characters, pulling them through to the end, having the characters learn something, have the characters constantly reject the pull towards the right choice or doing the right thing. Just explore ideas of how you come to understand heroism, perhaps how you might live out heroism and struggle with that through your characters, or how somebody can grow or change, or how somebody engages with their community or with their friends, how they fall out of community and then work their way back into communion with others. If it's romance, beyond the scope of where I'm going is to get into all of the details. The point is to learn to get good at it. And what is a good author? It's somebody who can hold the attention of the reader and pull them all the way through to the end. That is your job. That is, and my job is to learn to be a compelling fiction author. But this is like I said, you're learning the art of translation. Now, some will say, I don't want to write for other people. I just want to write for myself. Good for you. Go ahead and do that. Not everybody writes for an audience. But I'm going to recommend the art of storytelling itself is meant to be shared. Storytelling is a practice or a process that emerged out of campfires and religious ceremonies from the ancient world. It was always something done from a storyteller to a group of people to spellbind people's attention, to share with them experiences, maybe to educate, more importantly, to communicate an experience, to have an experience that that storyteller perhaps experienced, and then to translate it directly into their minds without them having to go through it in bodily reality. And then through learning that experience, through living a life that they hadn't actually lived, but kind of borrowing that experience from somebody else, they can grow in depth and wisdom as well. So this is a thought I discovered recently, which is quite powerful. You must be your novel. If you want it to be really impactful, if you have something beautiful and powerful you want to communicate, if you're trying to articulate a part of your faith, you have to be there first. You have to, if the message in your novel is important to you, understand why. Sit with that. Try talking about that, writing about that. Get clear with that before you put your characters through it. If all you're trying to do with your novel is evangelize, there is a place for that. I would recommend leave evangelizing to the evangelists. Our job is, as fiction authors, is not to evangelize. If you want to go do that, go ahead and do that. But if you're trying to write a fiction tale, the point is to captivate somebody's fascination, captivate their imagination, and have them feel like they can't put it down for an hour, 2 hours. I mean, you've done this. I've probably done this. Come across a novel which was so incredible, you just stayed up late or all night reading it because you couldn't stop. And the questions that it created resonated so deeply with who you are, with the kind of things you want out of life, that you just can't stop. So it's important. This is going to be part of your journey. One, learn to be a good author, because it is that craft of learning to be a good author that is critical. Second, if you love your faith, learn about your faith. As much as you're researching other things, also learn about what your faith is trying to do to you, not just what it says. Learn about the point of the gospel. You then actually have to start living it out yourself, talking about this with other people, sitting with it, exploring it. And this is what we fiction writers do, is we dramatize it. This is probably our way of understanding something, is turning it into a story. It's how we chew through an idea and make it feel real to us. So this is why I love to say your faith background is not a constraint on your creativity. I used to be so afraid that it was, because I would want to tell all kinds of stories. And then I would used to ask myself, well, can I? Can a faith-inspired person, can a Catholic, can an Orthodox, can they write the kind of story that I want to tell? As I've gotten older, I've begun to realize, yes, your faith, your Catholic or your Orthodox background is not a constraint on your creativity. It's a lifeline that lets you go anywhere and tell any story you want without losing your way. And this, I think, is the important thing. This is what we see struggling in modern media. Is they want to tell any kind of story, but they don't know where they're going. So they'll end up providing us with characters' lives and messages and deconstructed stories and so on, not understanding that stories contribute to a sharing of a universal human experience that we can all have communion with, depending on the phase of life that you're in, depending on the struggle you're going through, or the type of person that you are. And this is a really important point then. If you are creating a story to be shared, then what matters is who is your reader. And this is a basic thing for building yourself as a brand, starting a business, if you're writing a novel, especially a novel that you want to be sharing with people. Not every Christian or Catholic or Orthodox is going to write a story that is going to be accepted by everybody at every stage of life. There are some people who will want to write stories that are about reinforcing or dramatizing what life is like if you live in my culture at my time in history. But for example, the Song of Songs is not a book that you want to read for new teens. Hamlet or Macbeth are not stories to read to manic depressives. The story that you write is written for a particular person at a particular stage of their lives, because most of the time, the character that you're creating is that connection point, or the kind of story, or how you approach the story. So it's understanding that, it's owning that, it's sticking that landing of, who am I writing this for? And it may be that, as if you're an adult, you're tapping into an aspect of yourself, perhaps as a young person, and you're able to understand what is actually going on in the inner lives and the outer lives of young people. And so you write, for example, YA, dramatic YA fiction or sci-fi or something. But maybe now you have hopefully a wisdom that you can now put back into the learning experiences of your characters. But the point is to know who your reader is. Understand what it is that they're going to want to get out of your book, what they're going to resonate with. It's also just good branding, again, and it's good marketing because it helps the right kind of people to find your book. Most importantly, it helps you know what to include and what to leave out. It helps you know how to be authentic and real and how far maybe you want to go or how clear or explicit you might need to be. Because if you're writing for an extremely de-Christian modern audience, there are things or elements that you can include in your story that writing for your local parish community wouldn't accept or wouldn't be happy with. Not every story written by a Catholic is going to be comfortable to the average pew sitter, mostly because a lot of what we want to do is go to the fringes, the things that are forgotten, the things that fascinate us, and we want to dramatize them because we don't see them being done in stories anywhere. Or at least the stories that we're in contact with. So we want to spend that time and we want to see what is it of the faith that I can pull out and chew through and see what's in there. And in so doing, find out who I am and then share part of that journey. So I think that the job or the mission or the vocation or the calling or the adventuring of a faith-inspired fiction author is one of the most important ones. And if this is something that is calling you, I'm excited that you're on it. I hope that you take this as a kind of permission to explore the kind of story that you want to tell, because who you are matters. Where you are in your faith journey is important, and to sit with that and to understand that and to talk and to learn about that is important, and to understand who your reader is. And maybe you're not creating a masterpiece. Maybe that'll be later in life. Maybe you'll only just create the one. Maybe it'll be for yourself. The key thing I'll leave with you is this: God is not in competition with his creation. And it's very probable, very likely, if you're a faith-inspired fiction author, you're beginning to intuit this because you are interested in things and you're in love with things and you want to write about things that not everybody else is used to. Maybe you're interested in the fringes and the edges of what is normal in your culture because you want to understand where is God in that, or where is goodness in that, where is adventuring or hope or love. All of those are also God. Those are, of course, articulations or expressions or manifestations of God. But living those out through our characters' lives, through the adventuring, through the growth, all of that is what faith-inspired fiction authors do. So if you enjoyed this, I hope that you'll consider checking out LegendFiction.com. It's this creative community for writers to give and get feedback, share their works in progress, and well, maybe double or triple their writing because we're all having so much fun. And you'll hear me sharing this invite throughout the con if you're joining us today at Legend Haven. So thanks again. I'm so excited to have you with us. If you have any questions, you can always send them to me through the website. Most importantly, keep writing, and God be with you.